Welcome to this week's 10-Minute Trends hosted by Direct Agents. My name is Megan Conahan. I'm an EVP at Direct Agents.
I'm Jackson Richards, Director of Strategy with Direct Agents.
So Jackson, it's a short week, but lots to cover. So
Yes.
let's just get to it, I suppose. So
Okay.
the three things we're going to cover today for everyone: one, the impact of reopening on e-commerce; two is streaming services and churn; and then finally, Facebook Shop. So as always, if there are any questions that you guys have throughout while we're talking through things, just chat them to us and we'll do our best to cover them today. If not, we'll make sure to get back to you after the webinar. So first, the impact reopening is having on e-commerce. So we talked a little bit about this last week, but data continues to come in and also things continue to kind of open up. So we thought it'd be a really great topic to cover today as well. So Jackson, lots of physical retail has started reopening in some capacity or another. So how is that affecting e-commerce?
Sure. So yeah, we talked about this trend last week. Again, we showed a chart very similar to this, which essentially is tracking Apple's mobility index. So essentially, it's a measure of how much and how far people are moving around. And in this case, we're measuring that against Google Analytics revenue per session. So essentially, it's a measure of e-commerce health. And what we've been seeing, and it shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, is that as states have begun to reopen, more people are going back to work. Just in general, I think consumer confidence is increasing as there's starting to be a brighter light at the end of this tunnel that shopping has increased along with it. But one kind of interesting thing that we've seen over the course of this week is that for states that are still closed, states that are still under the strictest restrictions, revenue per session in e-commerce is actually higher for those than those in states that have reopened either partially or fully. And I think really what that points to is that in those states, there's just a higher share of purchases taking place online out of necessity. So e-commerce is growing across the country, regardless of the status of the state. So it's not a measure of just closed states growing. All states are growing in terms of e-commerce. But what we're seeing is that as our states have reopened, people are going out and spending in physical retail more, or just getting out of the house more. So I think really the takeaway here is for brands, as the country and more of the country begins to reopen, is just offer as much flexibility to your customers as possible in terms of how they can do business with you, whether it's pure e-commerce or buying online and picking up in store or curbside pickup or just kind of roadside purchases, things like that. I think the more flexibility that you give your customers, the greater of a chance you're going to be able to interact with them, regardless of the particular status of that state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The second thing we wanted to touch on is streaming. So obviously, when the pandemic happened, we saw a massive uptick in just people signing up for streaming services, obviously. And I think the question on everyone's mind was, are people going to cancel or get fatigued or something like that as things start reopening? So we have a couple weeks of data on this. So what is it showing?
Sure. So there's a few different kind of ways to split up the kind of streaming category. So one is like free services and things like Twitch would fall into this, which are heavily focused actually on live streaming. And we've talked about this throughout the last few months, which is that just streaming numbers have continued to increase. And as states have begun to slowly reopen, I mean, these numbers are still looking incredibly strong. So we're seeing huge growth metrics from live streaming platforms. Twitch, the hours watched jumped 50% March to April, and that's 100%, over 100% growth year over year. That's over 1 billion hours watched per month on Twitch. So this is a huge platform already, and it's booming right now. If you look at Facebook Gaming, 72% growth March to April, almost 250% growth year over year. These platforms are heavily focused on gaming, Facebook Gaming especially, but it's not just gaming. It's these live streaming platforms that enable people to live stream content across a number of different things, whether it's esports or gaming or commentary or just entertainment in general. These platforms are booming, and I think for marketers, we're going to see a huge influx of different types of advertisers coming to these platforms because the audience growth is is so big there, and it's too hard to ignore or just pigeonhole and say, it's just hardcore gamers here. I think these numbers show that it's a really broad audience, and I expect to see marketers follow their customers there.
Okay, so you think even going into the summer, May, June, these numbers will not necessarily drop. They'll at least stay flat, if not grow then?
Yeah, I do think there will still be an element of traditional seasonality in streaming, which tends to be a little bit lower in summer months. I think that it's going to be more of a case for like movie, TV sorts of streaming, not as much in like the gaming streaming sort of space.
Got it. Okay. The last thing I actually wanted to talk about is Facebook Shops. So a few days ago, we saw Facebook launch Facebook Shops. Obviously, they positioned it as a way to help small and medium-sized businesses sell more online. So it's obviously very, very timely. So can you just talk really quickly about, what is Facebook Shops? Why should we be, thinking about this, and what types of brands does this make sense for? Facebook said it was specifically for small to mid-sized businesses, but is it really kind of for any brand who is looking to sell more, and this is just a different platform to do it? I'd love to get your take on that.
Yeah, so this is a huge new push into e-commerce for Facebook. I think small and medium-sized businesses have been hurt, particularly hard by COVID-19. Although I think e-commerce has been a saving grace for many of these companies that have been able to either pivot to e-commerce quickly or were already an e-commerce-based business. Etsy, for example, who supports many smaller businesses, has seen growth, and now with Facebook's introduction of shops, it really allows for just a consolidation of an entire marketing funnel and customer journey within one platform. So a brand, or whether it's a small brand or a larger direct-to-consumer company, can do everything from prospecting marketing to shopping page to checkout to loyalty programs, all within one platform. I think it makes a lot of sense for companies of all different sizes to get into this, because it's a really consolidated, user-friendly way of kind of having that customer conversion path. But it also, I think, is going to be huge for Facebook's business. They're going to be able to sell advertising around this. They're going to be able to use their payment technology around this. So this is a very big push. This is not like Facebook kind of dipping their toes into this with Marketplace as they have over the last few years. I think this is going to be like a pretty huge new way of businesses, particularly direct to consumer, of marketing.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you want more information on Facebook Shops, we have our point of view up on our blog, so feel free to check that out. But lastly, I wanted to let everybody know before we jump that Direct Agents is hosting its second virtual summit next week on June 4th with speakers from Belkin, GE, Wacol, Jane, and Master and Dynamics. So if you're interested in attending, please go to our website, directagents.com, to register. So that's pretty much it for our 10-minute trends this week.
Wait, Megan, can we do a bonus? Can we do one bonus for today?
Oh yeah, I love bonus rounds. Go.
Okay, cool. If we can go back to the slide, which just says HBO Max on it. The reason I wanted to get to this is because it's launching today, and it kind of ties back to the other half of the streaming conversation that we were talking about on the subscription side. We've talked about a huge increase in subscription numbers for streaming services over the last few months, and the question really was going to be, are these subscribers going to stay? Or are they going to, as states begin to reopen and they're allowed to get out of the house more, are they going to leave? And the early numbers that we're seeing indicate that there's not a notable increase in churn. So these customers are staying, at least for now. And that leads us kind of to an interesting stage setting for HBO Max, which is launching today. Which, if you had asked me a few months ago, is there going to be room for them, at a $15 a month mark in this kind of crowded streaming space, I would have said, I'm not so sure. But, the numbers that we've been seeing in terms of subscriber growth, as well as customers staying on and needing ways to spend time, I think, it sets HBO Max up for a strong launch, unlike, let's say, like a Quibi, which also launched during the pandemic, but was kind of more geared towards people being on the move. and HBO Max is more geared towards that, premium content, but also with, using Warner Media's kind of access to mass content as well. So I think it's more suitable for the state that we're all in right now, but it'll definitely be interesting to see what the subscriber numbers look like over the course of a few months. But
Yeah.
I just did want to make sure we got to it because it's launching today.
Yeah, exciting. And I'm very interested to see what happens to Quibi when they launch their kind of streaming version. So it's not all on your mobile phone too. I know that's coming
Right.
in. So that'll be really interesting to see how that all kind of shakes things up too. So great bonus, love it. So that's it for today's 10-minute trends. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to email marketing@directagents.com. And if not, we will see you all next Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern.